Hello, this is Art Johnson of New World Communications, and welcome to another program of Books for a New World. These are books that have made a difference in my life and in the lives of others that I have in my Amazon-powered New World virtual bookstore. And the book that I'm reviewing today is a really interesting book that really got to me called The Five Principles by Ellen Debenport. Ellen is a Unity minister down in Texas who synopsized the core principles of the Unity movement that began in 1889 with Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, which kind of came out of Myrtle Fillmore getting a death sentence of having consumption, or what they call consumption, or tuberculosis, and from a doctor, and she went to a faith healer who gave a lecture on health healing that was that she could actually, through prayer, affirmative prayer, she could actually, in perfect understanding of perfect health, send a message to her body to cure her tuberculosis, and she actually did. And Charles found out about it, and he said, "Wow, we got to go deeper into this and find out what's really going on." So that formed the Unity movement, and out of that came the five principles, the five laws of life for practical spirituality that are synopsized in this book. And I'll just go over briefly. I don't want to go into any detail, but before I do, I want to just talk about why I'm doing this. Now, here I am, a guy who's involved with technology and who develops websites and uses Google Plus to grow business and all that. Why me? Why me doing this? The only reason I can say is that I'm being called to do this because there's something deeper that I found that is important. It's the kind of the truth behind all this technology, which I'm seeing, by the way, as an extension, a very spiritual extension of consciousness. And I've always been involved in the history of consciousness and have been influenced by the philosophy of Hegel, which I discover really profoundly influenced a lot of these 19th century, 20th century thinkers. So Hegel's deeply influenced the idea of that God is everywhere present, and that history is basically an unfoldment of the history of consciousness and an awareness of God. So anyway, I don't want to get into that. The practical idea is that this stuff, if you can learn how to do this, and this is what their practical thing was, if you could learn the way, and that's been popularized by movies like The Secret, which Rhonda Byrne actually was inspired by her daughter reading Wallace D. Wattles' Think, How to Get Rich, the science of getting rich, I think is what he called it. And she was so interested that she discovered there were followings of New Thought ministers, and so she actually made a movie, and she had audiences. So this thing just took off and became viral, became a bestseller. Oprah even picked it up. Just about everybody was moved by The Secret, but we've forgotten about it. But the principles are still at work. So let me go through them real quick, and then I'll welcome you to. We have the book in our New World virtual bookstore, which is an Amazon-powered bookstore, and it's well worth the read. First principle is God is everywhere present and absolute good. And, that's that whole immanent thing. And it's so different from a notion of Christianity that had God being kind of, you can't figure him out. He's either going to be mad at you or he's going to, praise you. So God is always good and everywhere present. And I might say that God in the unity principle kind of way is more of a I won't say more of, but a actual principle or a power, almost, in the words of quantum physics, the unified force of the universe, that everywhere, everything in the universe is made out of this substance, this invisible substance that creates the world, that everything is really based upon energy. And when quantum physics actually goes below the level of the molecule, there is more space than there is matter. Matter of fact, matter and energy are transferable. E equals mc squared is Einstein's theory that talks about matter can take on different forms, just like different, like water vapor and snow and water are all part of that same substance that just take on a different form. So anyway, and it's everywhere present. So you inherently, gets to principle number 2, are inherently part of that same thing, that same substance, that same divine presence. And if that divine presence is inherently good, not fickle, but all the time there on your behalf, then you are inherently good. Even though with even all your imperfections, your truest essence is good and is God, or an extension or expression of a unique individualized expression of God. And with that, if that's part of your inheritance, that gets you to principle number 3, that you got some real power. And this is where the laws of attraction come in. And it really says that human beings create their experience. And that's so different from what we think. We think that our everything, basically creates us. But this is really saying that your consciousness and how you deal with, what's coming in is your creation, your mental creation that you create as real. You create your reality by the activity of your thinking. And that's analogous to the divine creator, who essentially thinks the thought, declares the world, and then the universe gets created out of thought. And everything is, in the manifest realm, is a product of thought. And you can, even atheists, that don't look at God, and a lot of the unity people don't look God as this guy in the sky, but they find God in a very, very personal way, from the love they feel, from what they're discovering, the way that things are so organized in beautiful ways, in intelligent ways, that they're part of that same intelligence. And the real practitioners of that are able to think into the same one mind. That's why they call it unity, this one unified expression, and influence their lives and influence the world. And so we talk about attracting various things. So if you have positive thoughts and you're doing good things with those thoughts, you will attract more good. On the other hand, if you have negative thoughts, you will attract more negativity. So even, if you're looking at something like war, it's much better to be pro-peace than anti-war, because anti-war is just kind of going against that same negative unconsciousness that creates more negative unconsciousness and reaction, where being peaceful, affirming peace by what you do and what you say and what you think and how you are, can really make more of a significant difference. It's not that people don't care about or the suffering in the world, it's just how they approach that suffering, which is, I think, a really, really enlightened way. Which gets us to the next step, the next principle, which is how do you connect with this divine presence? How do you communicate? How do you commune with this divine presence? And particularly if it's not someone, not a God that you talk to that way. And the way that this is done is through affirmative prayer, which heightens the connection with God mind. God is this intelligence, and it's almost like by going into the silence. Going into the silence, you're actually kind of going into and actually quieting the mind and letting yourself be receptive. It's like you're actually going and being part of this same quantum field, which ends up being not empty but full of kind of energy that, in time, a lot of people believe we will find out, more about these fields of energy that are influencing us, that we are channeling into. How many times have you thought or felt someone, and then they call you on the phone? Well, there could be a transmission, a vibration, that you're sending out, that you're channeling in on. And I've done that so many times with my friends. I'll be thinking, gee, why haven't I heard? Boom, and then I'll get the phone call, or I'll call them. And so there's that whole thing of affirmative prayer, which is like meditation, and it's very good for your health. And you can actually, they do studies to say that things are so much better when you go into that suspended space where your mind is not full of mind chatter all the time. And then finally, the fifth principle is that knowing and understanding these laws of life, also called truth, are not enough, that a person must also live the truth that he or she knows to the best of his understanding. And what he or she knows is part of a learning process and is part of an unfoldment of consciousness. And, looking at the long view, these New Thought people are really interesting. They're looking at evolution, but they're looking at evolution not as this kind of random idea that just by happenstance this gene or that gene was chosen, or this. But we're looking at the fact that both there's involution, which is this conscious thought from an intelligence greater than we are. I mean, it's maybe read in natural science, a natural law, but nevertheless, understanding these principles you can't touch, but you can basically, theorize that this is what must, the principle of gravity that must be at work, or the principle of the law of attraction that seems to be working. All of these, make up and comprise a way to live. And so this is living to one's fullest, at one's highest self, as instead of just being a human being having a spiritual experience, it's actually you understanding that you're a spiritual being having a human experience. So the whole world and everything you do is really sacred. Even your mistakes are perfect. I make perfectly good mistakes. They're perfect. And what's so perfect about them is, instead of being frustrated by them, I'm kind of learning, almost like a scientist, like Thomas Alva Edison with these 1,000 different ways he messed up. He was always using his consciousness to arrive at that place where he got the perfect incandescent light, where the light shone through. So anyway, I encourage you to look at this book. I hope I didn't go too long on this, but it's a great thing to take a look at. So the book is called The 5 Principles by Ellen Debenport. Happy reading. See you later. Bye.